The pilot episode wastes no time, using the iconic Spinjitzu to bring the title of what you're watching onto the screen above, wiping away an overlay of Kai's face. A slight anomalous but quick tune sounds out slowly, as though the show has not yet found its stylistic footing in anything yet besides a vague interpretation of East Asian aesthetics. You also see an outline of the village below, similar to that of the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 menu screen. And as the intro concludes, the red screen fades away as the silhouette of the village dissolves into being where we actually are. This intro wasn't the most impressive compared to what would come later, but certainly matched the small-scale story that the pilots followed. For Season 1, The Fold made the song Weekend Whip. This song stands out as not only a phenomenal intro to Ninjago, but just an amazing song in general. It invites the viewer to many different interpretations of what Ninjago will be. The song boasts of optimism and comfort, especially with the soundbite that they used for the intros to Seasons 1 and 2 specifically, yet it also sounds fitting for action, fighting, and battle. Hence its use in The Royal Blacksmiths. It's extremely catchy, it's very fun, and in general, a great pop rock song. The Rise of the Snakes intro itself shows each ninja showcasing their powers, starting with Kai as flames rise. Their expressions match their personalities well, so you get a feel of who they are, even if you've never seen the show before, which I think was the intent. Cole is serious, Jay is casual, Kai is hot-headed, Zane is stoic. They also display the power of their weapons, their elements, and their Spinjitzu. This is likely done for, like I said, new viewers who don't know all the stats to the characters. This setup gives them a general premise of the character's abilities. I do find it funny that Jay uses lightning to put out the fire. The worst one here is Nia, who simply lunges forward, but that intentionally misleads the viewer into thinking she will be a side character when, during the season, she's revealed to be Samurai X. Pretty clever. At the end, you see the characters standing together for what feels like a family photo, solidifying their bond as a team. The intro is extremely well done, it's got a catchy song, introduces all of the characters and their powers. In the next season, they add Lloyd, who doesn't yet understand his powers, and neither does the audience. He's still young and inexperienced, leaving the viewer wondering the full extent of the legendary Green Ninja's capabilities. Unfortunately, Nia wasn't given a cool Samurai X bit to her intro, but what was cool was the fact that after Lloyd was giving an aging potion, they changed his segment to the intro to show his control over the main 4 elements. It looks really nice, and it was smart to wait until halfway through the season to use this intro, after we know Lloyd's control over the elements. Season 3 is when Ninjago was rebooted. It was originally supposed to end after Season 2. Upon being rebooted, they made that, rebooting, the theme of the season, technology and systems that get, rebooted. And this intro highlights that well. We get a remix of the Weekend Whip with some exciting EDM tunes thrown in toward the end as if to say, we're so back. You see icons of the ninja walk toward each other on a radar looking like video game sprites before jumping out, running, and then turning into lines that become their names. Zane being higher than the others symbolizes Zane's major role as the protagonist of the season, as opposed to Kai or Lloyd. That thing gets placed at the bottom of the screen before we see Lloyd punching the ninjoids epically. It's fitting for Lloyd's to be separate from the ninja, because in this season, Lloyd does separate things in Hiroshi's labyrinth with his father, while the ninja are more so in the city. The filter over the characters making them look like digital sprites is very fitting. We also see the eyes of the Overlord ominously watching us. The tune then goes full digital as we see Wu and Garmadon, whose face was luckily changed slightly. It hints at his new role in the season as a sensei. Unfortunately, Nia was shafted once again and given like a split second as the man at the desk type role, which honestly is kind of the role she plays in this season. Rather than Kai or Lloyd, we see Zane's face in the title screen above New Ninjago City. The futuristic sci-fi vibe is really highlighted through not only the music but the colors as well, the bright blues everywhere, like blue screens. The next season, Tournament of Elements has an intro which really stands out to me. This season, through things like the architecture, coloring, and the return of Snake, seems to blend visual elements of both the pilot era and Season 1, whether intentionally or unintentionally. This introduction montage captures this pretty well. The remix of the Weekend Whip sounds fully different from the original song, unlike Rebooted, which was still the same song with a few minor changes. This version of the Weekend Whip is also an EDM song, but the segment of the remix that they chose for the intro is this chorus which sounds more cinematic and mysterious. It's perfect what they did here. You see snake patterns on the dark red walls of this intro as everybody's names are introduced with rocks. The ninja each showcase their powers, but this time it actually comes from them, unlike previously where it was always from their golden weapons. The way the view moves around between the letters to show the next characters is quite creative. My favorite part of this intro is what they did for Zane, having his name present with the scroll hinting at his state. That was the perfect way to keep the viewer in suspense of what was to come next. This intro was used in the second episode where we had already seen that Zane was alive in some form, but only a glimpse, and his name still being in the intro really symbolizes his importance to the team remains. Nia, shafted once again, they have her welding panels to her name. I love Nia as Samurai X. I wish they made something cooler for these intros. I love the way they introduce Wu and Garmadon here with both of their names on the screen at the same time as they're going through martial arts stances. The way they move really matches the music. Then we see all the characters Spinjitzu into the viewer to bring us the intro card, which is very artistic. Overall, the vibe of this is suspenseful, which is the main feeling this season captures as you're watching the tournament. It's also very worth mentioning the video game Shadows of Ronin had a great intro as well, using the original Weekend Whip though, probably because it was a video game sold to not just Ninjago fans but gamers, so they wanted the standard classic normal song. This intro shows their powers with their names as big objects, just like Season 4, but here each slide is very unique with different colors and their elements being shown more, especially Nia, who shows off her Samurai X mech, knocking over her name. This is what they should have had in the Tournament of Elements intro. Honestly, this would be the superior intro out of all of the entire Will film era if it wasn't for the lower quality 3DS graphics. Season 5, Possession, has an intro viewed as iconic by the Ninjago fandom, and for good reason. This version of the Weekend Whip is not only more hardstyle, but more excitable at the same time. While increasing the suspense, hitting on each word with a spooky vibe to it, I don't know how the Fold remixed this so astronomically perfect, but wow. We see ghosts fly by each ninja, with each of them being spooked at what's going on, to show that Possession is going to be darker and spookier. The rising orchestra contributes to this feel. The ninja don't use their powers as much here because they are powerless in the season, which increases that thrill. Nia is shown second since she has a stronger role in this season than she had in any of the others, becoming the water ninja. As the POV stops to show each ninja, the filters and effects make them look like comic book panels, a unique creative decision that I quite like. At the end, the ninja all gather by a graveyard where Lloyd, disheveled, walks closer to the group, his eyes showing a green reflection, probably of the ghost in front of him who possesses him for the whole season, and then we pan over to a nearby graveyard for the intro title. This feels way more dark, yet also exciting at the same time, and the way it blends both of those feelings is outstanding. This version of the Weekend Whip might be the best out of the original ones. Next is Skybound's Pirate Whip. This one is definitely more fun and whimsical, giving into the fun pirate energy the villains of the season have. The coloring of this one's very nice, floating through the clouds which get darker and darker until Nauticon, the main villain, shows up. His echoey laugh is menacing. He poofs the title on screen. They did creative things with how each of the characters are moving through the sky, using their dragons, elements, air jitsu, and other means. I'm not sure why some of the characters were introduced as pairs. Misako didn't really have much to do in this season, but then again neither did Wu. I feel like they could have been cut from this intro, and then Cole and Zane could have been separate. I mean, Jay and Nia being together makes sense, as this season aims to tell their love story. For being such an oddly specific theme of sky pirates, this intro does fantastic at welcoming you to just that. Sorry if this audio sounds different, I actually forgot about the Day of the Departed intro, so I'm adding that in last minute. I see a lot of hype around this one. It's quite fitting for being a mini-movie. They have some like rock song playing with the ninja rushing into action. We get basically a whole scene of them racing through the desert to the museum. Their dialogue makes their urgency very clear. The animation here could definitely use some work, but I can see why this one has quite a few fans. And then there's Hands of Time, which there are very strong opinions out there about, though I think everyone agrees that this intro kinda slaps. It has the ninja jumping into action against the Time Twins, but it's stopped. The theme of the season is obviously time, and the way it's depicted here with the ticking of the clock as the scene moves in rhythm with it is so fitting. We pan by each character, and yeah, they look kinda like unrendered Blender animations in this whole season, but the music here is really great. The timing of the lyrics, the original beat flow, and other elements of the song have been moved and mixed around to either be faster or slower, while still being on pace in a way, as if the timing is distorted, again matching the theme of this season. What makes this intro stand out thematically is the dark red and orange glow. It helps show Ninjago's gradual transition to lighthearted into being darker and grimmer. The writers believe in a show aging as its audience does. That's why we went from seasons 1 and 2, which were exclusively for children, to things like the Oni trilogy for older kids. Hands of Time and its color scheme follows this pattern we've seen trend since Rebooted, season 3. We then zoom out of this scene to a clock. And then the intro we get for season 8 is very different from the others. Rather than a remixed rendition of The Weekend Whip, this one has a more serious and cinematic tone, which uses the tune of Ninjago's overture. A lot of the unique creative decisions here stand out and are extremely impactful. We start by panning over the water with the Destiny's bounty floating by. We see the ninja on the bounty, then in the street. Then we see Nia and the new Samurai X in the same shot, as if to show Nia has fully passed on the torch to this new person, who is revealed to be Pixel in this season. What's most important about this intro is that we're actually seeing the world, Ninjago City, the population center of the Ninjago universe, where the story will take place. It's extremely densely urban with cyberpunk inspiration. It's highly technologically advanced with sky trains and canals similar to that in Venice with the canoe system. There are a lot of bridges arching over roads to have more streets. We see the whole ecosystem here, and it's incredible. It makes the viewer understand that there's a lot more at stake here than just the characters. It also shows us that since the architecture is so dense, there could be so much going on behind the alleyways, behind the corners of what you see. We then cut to the Sons of Garmadon riding their bikes down one of the empty streets very intensely. The music suddenly changes to this energy of chaos and thrill as we see a close-up of one of the bikers. It's very mysterious, and leaves you wondering more about what's going on. Lightning strikes as Lloyd runs up to a girder and draws his sword as Garmadon's face pops up in the sky, giving an evil laugh. It's frightening, low-pitched, the atmosphere turns red, and we don't fully see Garmadon's face yet since they don't want to reveal him at this point. They want to give the viewer the idea that Garmadon's return will mean serious business, unlike in previous seasons where he was more of a comical villain. This opening is intentionally far less warm, and it encapsulates the season so well. This introduction takes itself very seriously, welcoming us to the new era of Ninjago. Seasons 8 and 9 don't boast of the same optimism as before. The feel beforehand, even when more tense like the Tournament of Elements intro, are light compared to this. Since we get so much detail over the whole city, it gives off the feeling that this city is about to change, and by the end, that's pretty true. When you watch the other intros, they usually give you a similar vibe to each other, that you're watching Ninjago, only on Cartoon Network. This intro feels like something new, something uncertain and uneasy, like a challenge the characters have never faced before, which is exactly the case. I mean, for the first time, Lloyd actually has to fight Garmadon, who's brutal and evil, unlike the previous versions of him. This status quo is actually greatly changed here by the end. The destruction to the city's horrific. There's permadeath, even in just the first few episodes of Season 8. I mean, the royal family doesn't come back. Harumi shatters Lloyd, and unlike Skylar, doesn't really come around. We get to see how the struggles impact the characters and story. This intro shows the characters can't just jump up, kick back, whip around, and spin their way out of this one. The next season, Hunted, has the same way of doing things, not introducing the individual characters, but jumping straight into the action, rather. We start immediately with the chase theme straight out of Outlast, with the dragon hunters chasing the ninja. This immediately solidifies the theme of being hunted, and after we get a good look at the hunters, dragons swoop by and the scene changes to Ninjago City, which is very destroyed. Smoke coming out of all these buildings and places. It's apocalyptic. We pan by the Colossus, the main thing causing all this damage, and at the bottom we see Lloyd and Nia with the Sons of Garmadon nearby in their Oni masks. Both the four ninja and Lloyd and Nia are in the same situation, being hunted in an apocalyptic world by big evil forces with nowhere left to hide, as if both groups are running on the same chain but on two different sides. Which is the next visual. We zoom in and we see the four ninja running on a chain. This visual alone is my favorite from all of the intros. You can see on the faces of the ninja that they are visibly angry, stressed, restless. The chains in the background are such a nice, grim visual. Meanwhile, Nia and Lloyd are scared. The side of the chain that the ninja are on glows tan like the ground and sky and atmosphere of the first realm, whereas Lloyd and Nia's side of the chain glows blue like the Ninjago city lights and the dark night sky. Their expressions show us the fear and dread the characters will endure. However, none of that matters because both groups peer down into the abyss and see the main villain of the season, Garmadon, come up like a shark, breaking through all the chains, because he's unleashed, he's free and all-powerful. Beforehand, he was always restrained by something, you know, restrained by the Overlord, restrained by the love that he had for his son. Whether it was himself or something else, he was always restrained, but now, that evil has broken through the chains. Garmadon is more powerful than he ever has been, more cruel, and he has control over the city. Whereas the ninja are small on this chain, Garmadon is huge, showing his dominance over the story. He's even the one naming the episodes. This tune also tries to incorporate that Ninjago overture sound partially, but when it folds into being a scary chase theme, it hits. The rising tension of the song goes further than that of the last season. This might be the best one artistically speaking. Whereas Season 8's intro had the ninja in the background, this one shows them not only up front, but their struggles, their agony and worry spread across their faces. And then for Season 10, well, they thought Season 10 was going to be the ending, so the intro is just a big nostalgia push. It has a grand version of the overture with artwork of everything the ninja have been through, including this from the Dark Island trilogy. I do love that they did acknowledge that in the show to some degree. One peculiar thing is that you hear a voice clip of Harumi calling Lloyd's name. As we see from later seasons and books, Harumi was a huge part of his life. It was almost like the main part, like the Oni trilogy era was the biggest struggle in his life, and since Harumi's not in this season, I think that small clip was a good decision to add there, calling back to her significance over Lloyd as a character and everything going on thus far, including Garmadon's very existence. I don't understand why we see Nia first to illustrate the pilot era. It probably should have been Kai, but whatever. The intro ends with a picture of the Oni standing atop a cliff. They had Cole narrate the name of the episode, probably because I think he was the only one who hadn't. He had never gotten his own season until Master of the Mountain, which would come way later, so they tried to shoehorn him in as having more importance symbolically by also giving him the previously on Ninjago line. But it doesn't really work. The main thing he does in this season is fall off of a ladder as if he can't create an elemental dragon or use air jitsu, and he lives through that completely unharmed. This intro works for what this season actually is, basically a bunch of nostalgia pulls. The tune is nice though, having a clearer version of the overture in a cinematic way, like seasons 8 and 9 incorporated into their themes with suspense, but this is like the version without suspense, if that makes sense. Now, as for the rest of the show, produced by Wildbrain with new animators and writers and everything, they changed these intros to not introduce the characters, but have some artistic backgrounds showing briefly what happened on the last episode. This way they could remove the previously on Ninjago part. They start using a new rendition of the Weekend Whip, which they then remix for all the other seasons. For 11, the background here isn't as artistic, it's just red. I do like this guitar riff though. The Ninjago logo burning up for the fire chapter, then breaking as ice for the ice chapter is about as cool as the season 11 intro gets. It feels more like a base for what type of intros will follow later, as they will use this format, customize and remix this. Season 11's intros are more like templates, if anything. The next season, Prime Empire takes this template and gets very creative. The remix here is very techno, matching the video game aesthetic of the season. We see a chip in the machine activate before shooting power into the arcade machines, the screens of which show us what happened previously. After this, we see all the arcade machines line up and pull us into Prime Empire. The Ninjago logo comes up in a very Vaporwave-esque background. Since Prime Empire is said to have been invented decades prior, it likely came out in Ninjago's version of what they would consider the 90s probably, supposing that the ninja were born in, say, the very late 90s or early 2000s. So I like the Vaporwave-ish style and the glitchy text and glitching audio effects, along with the pixel art here. I think it totally works for what this season is. The next one, Master of the Mountain, has a very artistic opening. We start with Shintaro, orange power flowing into the icon before the cellar doors swing open. It matches the markings we see with Cole's energy when he learns Spinjitzu Burst, and it generally looks very cool. We then go into the ground from the perspective of a minecart, and we slow down to see one of the previously on Ninjago Ninjago flashback, which appears on the wall for some strange reason, but after that we then turn to see a crystal where the next one is on the reflection. It looks like a green emerald. We then pass by a blue crystal and see another, and then we see a skeleton holding a gold plate. It very clearly shows the medieval style that this season has, seeing primitive things like a gold plate and mine carts and the cellar door. Finally, we see the Ninjago logo powered by the orange aura before it bursts as if it's a volcano erupting. The music here is more fantastical. It's kind of slower but more dramatic. It boasts of a high fantasy adventure in a traditional fantasy medieval setting. Oh, apparently the island has an intro. I always forget the island even exists. Basically, they use 2D flat art with tropical settings. The colors here are pretty vibrant. We see an eye peering from the bush. The pink lightning looks pretty cool, especially as it strikes the 3D Ninjago logo. The tune here is a marimba version of the overture, as far as I understand it. The flashbacks of the previous episode are not put in very creative places, but the colors do pop. Now, the Seabound one is interesting. Obviously, the theme here is water, so what they do is have that 2D art of deep sea related things. You start at the top where the first flashback is at the surface with fish surrounding it. You then descend to lower coral, bubbles come up and bring you deeper where the colors are getting darker and you're seeing abandoned ships, presumably victims from Kalmar. The tune here is a softer, more royal version of the overture that twists into being more dramatic as you go down. And toward the bottom of the ocean, you see these creatures swimming with some green steam, and then the logo comes up, shiny and made of water. The dramatic sound of the song matches well considering both the ending but also the gravity of things happening in this season. And finally, we have Crystallized, which admittedly has a pretty great intro. The theme here is a rendition of the Weekend Whip that's also made to sound like the overture at the same time. And it's done in a highly energetic way. The aesthetic of the season is around these pink crystals, and I don't even think that was ever explained why. The Overlord seems to get his power from them, and it strengthens others. I don't really get it, but I think it was a very nice creative decision. I like the look. Rule of cool. It doesn't matter if it makes sense as long as it looks cool. So therefore, that's what the intro taps into. And despite the lack of scenery compared to intros like Master of the Mountain, I actually love the design and coloring here. We zoom through some crystals, see flashbacks to the last episode on the reflections, and then after that we flip over to see all of them with one rising up only to be struck by this pink lightning power and explode into a golden Ninjago logo. I love the look of this setting where it's like dark and stormy. The only light is of these evil crystals glowing vibrantly, and the song tension rising right up to where the crystal explodes is absolutely perfect. I would have liked to talk about the Dragons Rising intros, but I'd rather wait for more seasons to come out. And it's 5 a.m. right now at the time of recording this, so I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed. Alright, laters.